that John Gruden really, really likes. Let's go back to New York and Chris Berman.
All right, Sal, thank you. Joe, let's look at the tight end depth chart as the Eagles consider either Mitchell or a draft pick. And this is what they had. Ed West really running on at the end of the career. It's been a nice career.
Right, he's at the end. Jimmy Johnson's really a blocker. Reggie Johnson and Ricky Brady. I mean, you got no production out of an offense from the tight end, which is really a West Coast offense. We showed you on ESPN 1 what the tight end production should be out of a West Coast offense. The tight end should catch anywhere between 20 and 25% of the passes thrown. As you can see for the Eagles, that's barely scratching the surface of what they want to do. This is, I think, a deal with Johnny Mitchell would help John Gruden out tremendously, and Ray Rhodes would then have a complete offense. Johnny Mitchell would flourish here. You give him a reason to go someplace and get excited about playing football, which he would be able to do in Philadelphia, and catch 50 balls and catch probably 8 touchdowns down around the goal line. You're going to have yourself one exciting football player.
You know what, Mel and Joe, this year, more than usual, it's a pretty deep draft in the first 2 rounds for tight ends. Usually you have 1 or 2 players, and then that's it. But Mel, I mean, we had all these guys going through the second round, didn't we?
Well, we had a strong year last year, too, Chris. You remember, a lot of those tight ends contributed heavily, and a lot of teams filled voids at tight end. And of course, you also have, exactly, and you also have some veteran tight ends available in trades. Troy Drayton's name's been mentioned, as well as Johnny Mitchell, but certainly Jason Dunn, McWilliams, and Battaglia has already been selected. We're your top group.
All right, let's go up and see what Philadelphia has decided. Go up to the podium. Gene Washington, the voice of the second round.
Philadelphia has selected Jason Dunn.
There it is.
Tight end, Eastern Kentucky.
Well, I would tell you 2 things. They have selected a player that some had going late first, and any deal for Johnny Mitchell is now done.
That's right.
With the selection of Jason Dunn.
This kid played every position imaginable coming through the high school ranks, and of course at Eastern Kentucky, didn't catch a lot of passes. Watch him when his tight end reversed. You see, this is a kid that's 260 pounds. He can run. He ran a 4.51 during an individual workout. Tremendous strength. Did 34 reps during a workout. Look at this ability, Joe. This is a kid 260 pounds. So I tell you, he can motor. He's just not a big, slow tight end who can't get off the ball, and of course can't get downfield. And as far as blocking, that's where he needs to become a little bit more consistent. I think the work ethic is what people consider. Here he played some defensive end this year, had a couple sacks, a couple hurries, but I think that's why Jason Dunn is still here. People didn't feel he was a worker, that he would get in and do the kind of things on the practice field and in the off season to prepare and try to maximize all that great physical talent that he possesses.
I think the physical side of it is really what impresses me. To be able to play defensive end and swing over there and do the things that you need to do on that side of the football, as well as be a tight end. He is a total package. His upside potential is absolutely incredible. Gruden's got to be thrilled. He would have liked to have maybe had the veteran in Mitchell, but now he brings in a young kid who can do a lot for his offense. Bigger and probably a better blocker than Johnny Mitchell would have been as well.
And the concern's really over, too, now. It's not the first round. We're late second round now. There's no concern. You don't worry about that. Now you're getting a great physical talent. Yes. If he doesn't develop like you hope, you haven't wasted a first-round pick and a lot of money.
Well, now Denver is up next in a pick they got from Detroit. The Broncos have gone defense twice. Did they do it a third time? Denver, Green Bay, New England. That's what's coming. Round here at the theater at Madison Square Garden as the NFL draft continues. And now when you make a move in the second round, as Baltimore has just traded up for Denver's second-round pick, or the second-round pick, from the Bobby Beathard School, here is the trade. The pick hasn't been made yet, but obviously Baltimore is somebody that they are hot and bothered about to move up to take this pick in the second round, and Denver gets 3 picks from Baltimore, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 7th. Could this be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, running back, who we all thought that Baltimore Mel in the first round would go running back, but they took Ogden instead? And then later on, you know, they went Ray Lewis, linebacker. Is this a running back, and is this Abdul-Jabbar?
Well, I think, you know, you become concerned when you see a Jason Dunn go, and this is a player was projected earlier. Now you see players going for value purposes. And I think with Baltimore, you got to remember, they gave up some picks, but they have 2 5s, 2 6s, and they still have a 7. So they have a lot of extra choices in the later rounds. They do have some cap problems. You'll talk about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar being a running back.
Or Dawkins, maybe. Who would you pick?
In this case, Jabbar. He's more creative and more elusive. And I think that's the difference. Dawkins is more of a straight-line guy. Jabbar gives you a little bit more versatility in and out of his cuts, in and out of the blocks, and I think he doesn't put as much pressure on the offensive line as a Dawkins does.
Well, if it is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the question, and I don't know whether you think this is an apropos analysis, but first of all, he gained, and you know what's coming, Joe, 1,000 yards under 2 different names. Last year under Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and the year before that, Sharman Shah. So He's a 1,000-yard back, but for two different names, so he's got to be versatile. He makes you miss. Doesn't have great speed, but he makes you miss like an Amp Lee. Is that an apropos comparison?
I think it is. I think when you look at him, I think he'll be a better back than Anthony was because I think when you look at this kid, he works tremendously hard in practice. He's got some quickness. He's got creative abilities. He just doesn't have a great 40 time. And he has had some durability questions because he's 5'10 and a half, 190 pounds. But remember, running behind this Baltimore line, you got Ogden coming in. You got those two big tackles. You got Everett, the big center.
Yes.
They got Blackshear. They just added a 320-pound guard. This is a mammoth offensive line. It can at least allow Jabbar, if they do select him, to have some running room.
Let's go down to Sal Paolantonio quickly in Baltimore and see what you can hear through the door. Sal?
Chris, I was told they're looking for a defensive player, and Ted Marchibroda said he needs a cornerback, and of course he's looking for linebackers. They were also looking for tight end. They were surprised that Philadelphia took Jason Dunn with that pick. They heard that the trade talks were heating up with the Jets with Johnny Mitchell. They were surprised that Jason Dunn went to Philadelphia. Let's go back to Chris Berman in New York.
Okay, well, we've kind of gone around. We've covered about every position. It's that time in the draft. Let's go to the podium and see what they've done.
Could be Mickens. Duran Jenkins. Either one of the two.
Nice pickoff.
Well, you know.
Well, if it's DB.
Educated
Baltimore has selected Duran Jenkins, defensive back from the University of Tennessee.
Duran Jenkins.
Green Bay is on the clock.
Tennessee, so immediately you know he's got some speed. You agree with that pick, Mel, at that spot? I mean, he's a guy that...
I tell you, Mickens is the guy. I mean, if I'm going to pick
He's just short. The people are scared. Of course, Darrell Green's pretty short, and he's had a pretty nice career, hasn't he?
Yeah, but I think when you look at, exactly. I think Mark McMillan of New Orleans just signed, and I think when you look at the size, you can go a little too crazy and downgrade players too heavily. Mickens is also an outstanding return man. Duran Jenkins has some ability. There's no question about it. But, when you look at him playing cornerback, you look at the techniques of playing the coverage position. I don't think that's where he's lacking. He certainly needs a lot of work. He did have a decent career at Tennessee. Played some wide receiver early on, so he's a little inexperienced. I just look at Duran Jenkins, and I cannot put him in the same league with a Ray Mickens. I'm sorry. I think when these two players get to the NFL level and we see these two players develop, I think you're going to see Ray Mickens do a better job than a Duran Jenkins. So, to give up all that they did to get a Duran Jenkins is, I think a very, very hefty price to pay, especially when you could have stayed where you were and still got either a Mickens or, if you're going to stay where you are and you still have two cornerbacks that are equal in ability, stay where you are, don't give up anything.
Well, what you're saying is he's not that bad for this spot in the draft, but he has to give that up to do all the pay.
Yeah,
what about
exactly.
what do you think,
Yeah,
Joe?
I think, to me, I think there's a glaring need for a running back here. And the thing that I'm trying to figure out, if you're giving up that many places, if you're moving that far to go get a corner, then you got cap problems. They're not going to be economically able to afford all their draft choices, so they got rid of them, which makes sense. But look at Leroy Horde, Biner, Hunter, Powers. I mean, you only have 2 touchdowns rushing the football through your entire 95 season, and you don't really, and all these guys are older. We're not talking about young backs that aren't productive. I think running back is an area that somehow or other this football team is going to have to address. If they don't do it in the draft, which it looks like they probably won't, there's probably going to have to be a deal down the road somewhere to get themselves some type of a running back. Now, Jabbar, I think, would have been the right, in my opinion, would have been the right fit here.
Oh, I agree. And I think, like you say, it is a need area. I mean, cornerback Don Griffin is not going to go on forever. And I think they need a coverage guy opposite Antonio Langham, Joe. So they did, in their defense, they did fill a need.
Oh, I
just myself would have gone for a different player at that position. And certainly Jabbar is going to be a steal for somebody.
Well, now that the door is open, guys, down in Baltimore, let's head back to Sal Paolantonio and find out what they were thinking with this move. Sal?
Chris, I think Joe Theismann may have hit the nail right on the head. Art Modell has not had any income here since November. In fact, on tax day, on April 15th, a group of banks put together by the Maryland Stadium Authority had to float Art Modell an operating loan. We're not sure about how much it was, in excess of $15 million, just to get through the operating expenses until they start to sell season tickets for Memorial Stadium for 2 years, personal seat licenses for the new stadium 2 years down the road. So it's definitely money could be a factor here. Let's go to Chris Fowler in Connecticut.
All right, well, a guy who certainly knows Art Modell very well, former boss, matter of fact, Mr. Modell was of Mike Lombardi when you worked as the Browns director of player personnel. Economics, obviously, really the hidden factor in draft picks that a lot of the draft nicks don't understand, the reason behind these selections and behind trades like this one.
Well, I think what you could see here is they obviously get a good player. It'll be a lower cap number than, say, Donnie Griffin, whose cap number is relatively high, and they get a young player. Traded late draft picks in terms of cap value is dangerous because those are the players you can keep for 4 years. They'll be on your roster. So they're the ones that got to come up through the ranks and play for you.
Now back to a trade that wasn't made. Tight end perhaps.